Welcome to the Church of Thomas. These are readings from Awakenings in an Age of Angels, and this chapter is called Cattle Cars. The stockyard stank of fear, excrement, and mud. The cattle cars pulled in 3 times daily on busy days. The stockyard workers worked hard 7 days a week to handle the demand for products. There was a shortage of petroleum products, fertilizer, and leather goods. There was a medical lab nearby that needed experimental animals. There was a special team sent out by the lab to pick up any suitable subject animals. A breeder was there every day to make sure a valuable animal was not lost to a breeding program he had set up. Every day was busy. The mayhem was more intense on cold, wet days because when the cattle were urged down the ramps with prods, they would slip. The ramps were slick, and the crush of animals invariably led to a few being trampled. If an animal broke a bone in the trampling, they were a hindrance to the flow of the herd, and were either shot or taken to the lab in case they were working on broken bones that day. And they would be useful in spite of their clumsiness. None of the cattle had eaten or had water in days. The shipper had figured out that it meant less cleanup of the cattle cars after a delivery was made, which was more efficient, which meant faster turnaround times. The cattle were fearful, milled around. The sorting of the bulls from the cows, the calves from the cows, always raised the noise level. When the tattoos had to match the cargo manifest, it was frowned upon to send an experimental animal to the rendering plant, or vice versa. The breeder watched carefully for heifers too young to have been bred that looked too good to slaughter. Mistakes could be made. Once or twice a week he would find one worthy to be saved from its fate. They had obviously been included in the shipment by mistake. They went to their new lives not knowing how close a call they had with the rendering plant. They would be bred to the finest bulls in the land. Daily, the medical lab usually found more to save from death. They were often very young animals, very healthy young animals that could be trained more easily. It was considered a coup if the young animal had the same mother. It was a special line of experiments designed for subjects that were closely related. If they were close in age, it was even better to rule out a resiliency bias in the experiment. It was truly a great day when they were twins. Most of the rest were sent down to the rendering plant. There they would be slaughtered and made useful to the company. The fat was cooked off and stored in big barrels. This fat would oil machinery across the country. The hides were examined for imperfections. The perfect hides were chosen to be tanned. The rest were rendered. The protein and bone that was left after the rendering process was ground up for animal feed, supplements, and fertilizers. The blood was collected for a specialty fertilizer. Some of the hides turned out to be so good they were made into novelty lampshades that became very popular with the rich and elite. The workers were all very proud to provide basic necessities to their nation's needs. It was a dirty job, but someone had to do it. This was a concentration camp. The breeder selection was for young Jewish women who had blue eyes and blonde hair. They were chosen for the honor of being bred and serviced by the bulls of the SS. It was assumed that they had some Aryan blood that could be brought out this way through their children. Dr. Mengele ran the medical lab. He did experiments on many subjects, including burning, freezing, and bone breaking. He was learning about healing rates, disease mortality, and live dissections called vivisections to see how organs function. None of the experiments wasted anesthesia on these animals. His favorite subjects were twin children for comparison purposes, and of course they looked for ways to make the slaughter process more efficient and streamlined. The fat was of people as was the blood and flesh, the source of animal feed and fertilizers. The last note is the lampshade. They were made from the skin, often with tattoos the former owner had chosen to adorn their own bodies with. The numbers tattooed on their arms were to record where, when, and who these animals were. Never again.